calls I got, or Berdella got, was from Alan. He said, I want to be there. And we were excited that he would come and take his time out of his business and help us understand our issues with our Aerostars, help us troubleshoot, help us become better pilots through knowledge of how our systems work. Anyway, Alan Speamaster's here, and I wish you to welcome him.
Thank you, everyone. Just for a change, I thought today that I'd always try and do something different. So today I'm going to sing to you. No, I knew that wouldn't go over well. So the aero for myself is 52 years in aviation, 32 years on the Aerostar, and I can finally fix one. Just. So for all these years, I've always tried to do something different. You know, way back in, I think it was 88, we took a prop and hacked it in pieces. And since then, we've hacked governors, heaters, controls, prop sinks, props, mags, vibrators. If it's in the airplane, I've cut it in half and gone through it with you. And something dawned on me at late time. You guys are like the CIA, you all operate on a need-to-know basis. You don't give a monkey's what's inside the alternator. You just want to know, why does it break? What is it that's broken, and how do I get it fixed easy? So I decided to try and change things around this time. I don't have anything I've hacked in pieces, and I'm not going to tear system to pieces except for minusculely going into one system. All of this is from what owners have said to me. This is what's driven this. So I went into the Aerostar maintenance manual, which divides things up by what's called the ATA code, and they give a code number to each system in the airplane, whether it's 28 that's fuel or 32 that's gear and 24 is electrics, and they break it all up. So I took this tome and I sat and looked through it, and I thought, what is it that always breaks in these systems that I can help you maybe to stop it breaking, or to help you say what's actually going wrong with it. And I picked a big system which everyone says to me is really complicated in the Aerostar, the fuel system. And you've all got flight manuals. I know every one of you has looked at pictures of the fuel system and tried to understand it. And why does it look complicated? You all agree it looks complicated? No, it's simple. How about if I make it really simple? Let's talk shoe boxes. We're going to take 3 shoe boxes, men's size. Men's size, shoe boxes. But we can't leave the ladies out. We need 2 more shoe boxes, small shoe boxes, but smaller and more delicate. Believe it or not, this is the entire fuel system. This represents fuel that's in the right-hand wing. Fuel, left-hand wing. Fuel in the fuselage. This is what makes it so easy. This fuel flows into this box. This flows into this box. This one goes this way. This goes this way. Is this complicated? Everyone says this is a really complicated Aerostar. This is a complicated fuel system. It isn't. This is the system. Fuel from the right-hand wing flows into this box. Fuel from the fuselage goes into this box. Left wing to this box, fuselage to this box. So all we do is we take fuel out of this box, and we take it to the engine. Tell me if this looks complicated. I heard that solenoid. That's a good sign. You remembered it. So how do we control the fuel? Let's just put a shut-off valve right there. You want the fuel on, all you do is open the solenoid, and fuel to the right engine comes out there to the engine. Left selector goes on, fuel from the box comes out to the left engine. How easy is that?
I don't get it.
Really easy. What happens if you want to use crossfeed? You take another valve from the left wing box and you join it up here. So now, if you've got the right engine selected to on, fuel comes through here to the engine. If you've got the right selector on crossfeed, the act of turning that pear-shaped knob, which just turns the switch with a bunch of rotary micro switches, closes this valve and opens this one. So the fuel now comes from here to this one, not this one, this valve. So the fuel comes from the left wing, past this T, to the right engine. That's crossfeed. That's the whole fuel system. To make sure fuel doesn't flow back, they put little check valves here. So what goes in this box can't come back out except from there. That's the fuel system. Complicated, right? If a crossfeed valve doesn't close properly, in normal running, the right engine will be taken from the right wing and the fuselage out of there. If the left crossfeed valve doesn't close properly, now the right engine is also taken from there. So the left wing that's feeding the left engine, and the fuselage that's feeding the left engine, now the left wing's also feeding the right side, so the left tank is getting double dipped. Make sense? So you're flying along. Why is the left wing going down much faster than the others? Probably because the crossfeed valve didn't close. So both engines are drawing from one wing, as well as the right engine drawing normally from the fuselage and the wing. Simple enough? Simple questions on that? Yes?
Whereabouts is that valve located in the wing? How do you find it?
In the belly, when you open the gear doors, is this whole thing. And in the belly, on the bottom of the fuel bladder, there's a box, for want of a better description, and the compartments are inside here. And the valves on the outside to outside, which quote are across from each other, are the crossfeed valves. So across from each other is the crossfeed. The main valves are tucked around the back side where you can't get them. So the two main valves around the back, crossfeeds, across from each other. There's two types of valves. There's one with a red box, made by Dukes, and there's a grey coloured one made by ITT. The Dukes ones you can't repair because I think Dukes lost their license. The ITT ones you can repair. There's a couple of shops that fix them, and they mix and match.
Which one's red?
Can you replace
Dukes. Dukes is the red one.
Can you take out the Dukes and put the other one?
Yes. Yeah, the mountain there is actually the same.
If you have one wing that is pulling down faster than the other, so the valve that doesn't close, you're not going to get any indication, and the motors, you might hear both motors operating.
Yeah, you
but
don't
it might
know
not
anything about it, but if a crossfeed valve doesn't close fully,
okay.
It's been double dipped by both engines from one wing, so that one wing will go down.
So if you're
faster.
having to constantly, do crossfeed in order to get your wings balanced out when you're flying.
Remember, this is because this one's feeding faster.
Right.
It's not that this one's feeding slow,
right,
which is like loose gas caps.
Right.
It's this one's feeding faster, noticeably. You see it, quote, why is that wing going down so fast?
Okay. So first check the gas cap to make sure you have good,
the
O-rings.
gas cap stops it feeding.
Right,
So
because
the
there's a
gas cap
vacuum.
won't do this.
Okay.
If the crossfeed valve, and this is why I picked this valve, if the crossfeed valve sticks, you got both selectors in the on position.
Right.
So one engine's drawing from its wing and the fuselage. The other engine's drawing from its wing and the fuselage. But because the crossfeed valve didn't close, the other engine's drawing from that wing as well.
Right.
So we're double dipping that one tank. And the only way you've got of knowing it is your wing is going down much faster.
Right.
On that side.
Okay, so
Whereas the O-ring will cause it to be slow.
Slower.
Not fast. That's where you're.
That's the secret. It's going down
When the
faster.
O-ring is
Well,
not getting a good
right,
signal,
because it has a
that's
vacuum
the
on it,
right.
and so it's keeping it from drawing out. I'm just saying to try to figure out if you're constantly having one going down faster. First, make sure your O-rings are good. Now you need to look at when the last time those valves were replaced, and you may have one that.
Yeah, and the odds are it's probably the original. It's only now all these valves are starting to go wrong.
Okay.
Been in
Which
there
O-ring,
hundreds.
which
Of,
O-ring are you talking about?
well, they're talking about the O-rings on the gas
Yeah.
caps
Oh,
because
yeah.
the vacuum over the wing stops the wing feeding. But I'm saying the double dipping from a crossfeed valve stuck open makes that wing feed blatantly much faster.
When you switch back and forth in pre-flight
Yes,
to check from on to crossfeed,
yes.
and you can hear the motor.
Right.
Does that mean it's good? or
It
is
means
not?
the valve is working, but you can't tell if it's actually closing. The only way you can tell that is to come to Don or Joel or me and say, something's wrong with my valve. And we end up
Okay.
draining the airplane and taking it out to look.
Gotcha. Okay.
So there's no other way to check it other than pulling it out. Okay.
So the switching back and forth won't.
Well, you know, you can go in there and play with the hoses at the back, but to do this, you're going to pull a pipe off. And you can't do that, there's no room.
But
Okay.
if that crossfeed valve is not fully closing all the way, and all of a sudden you come back over a weekend, and all the fuel from the left wing is kind of starting to move over to the right wing. Could it be that valve not closing, causing it to just gravity feed right on past?
Right, another question on the fuel system. If you got the right selector on crossfeed, which fuel pump do you use? Okay, you
Both.
got the right selector selected to crossfeed. You want a fuel pump running for that engine. Which fuel pump do you need left? If you've got the right selector on crossfeed, which pump do you want, left or right?
The left. The
You
right?
guys need to read your fuel system. Fuel pump is on the side that you're running. Right fuel pump, right engine. Left fuel pump, left engine. And this is why I picked this way of doing it with you, because I've seen this so many times with a million different owners when they're misconstruing stuff and then giving themselves a problem that they shouldn't have.
We use both fuel pumps.
And both is fine,
both
but
low
the
or-
fuel pump never changes sides.
Right.
The fuel pump is after, it's the last thing.
Yeah.
Fuel pump, fuel screen, then heads off to the engine. So right engine, right fuel pump, that never changes. Even if you're in crossfeed, still same.
Alan,
Yes,
how is the venting system affected in this process about avoiding crossfeed if you don't dump that extra fuel out of the bottom? How's that interplay here?
not sure I understand your question. The vent system doesn't change. The vent system's the vent system's the vent system.
But you've got to drain that sump on the vent system for it to work.
You can, on the airplanes that have got the Christie Moulton, which you can see if you look at the top wing skin forward of the filaments, if you see two screw heads, then you've got this system where Christie tried to stop the wings over pressurizing from the float valve closing and trapping the pressure in the wing. So basically he cuts one of the pipes and leaves the float pipe open into the vent system with the tanks. We found over the years that when fuel fills up that vent pipe, it makes that wing feed unevenly. So you should drain it. You just drain it till the fuel stops coming out.
But does the vent system work?
Yes, it does. It doesn't totally alleviate the pressure. You can pop the cap and there's still pressure, but it's not as much as before. Another little thing, gas caps. Yes.
A lot of times you see where fuel moves from left wing to right wing, even with the fuel selectors off. And the check valves have been replaced. Been fighting this for years.
The check valves can't allow fuel from one wing to the other.
The theory is, yes.
They can't. The check valves are in these boxes here, here and here. So fuel, if the check valve is stuck, can run in here into the box, but can't come back up there because of the valve. So the only way fuel can run, and Don and I are discussing this right now, the only way fuel can go from wing to wing is you've got to have two crossfeed valves that are not ceiling way.
Not the check valve.
Not the check valve.
They can't move through the other fuselage to the side.
No, can't come up here and then back down because your fuselage level will change. And the ones Don's seen this and the ones I've seen this, the fuel went from this wing to this wing and the fuselage didn't change. It was on level floor in the hangar. And I think Don is still playing with his right now. He's got his valves now.
Well, 3 and 4 overhauls, waiting on seals to one.
Another question, gas caps. Anyone have problems where you push the gas caps down and they pop back up? They don't lay flat? Everyone's there, gas caps, they snap them down, they lay totally flat. Okay. If you stand the gas cap up, the part you stand up and you look at the base of it, it's flat. And where you lever the arm back over, the part it lays on is flat. Well, between those two flats is a corner. If that corner gets worn over time, which they do, and it goes round, you snap the gas caps over and it all want to stand up again. It doesn't want to lay flat. And the only fix is to change that lever, and you can't buy the lever. So I cheat. I take the levers off, I go to my local sheet metal shop, and I have them put a tiny little bead of weld right along the corner, then I file it square, and the problem.
Makes sense.
That's good to know,
Alan?
because some of
Alan?
the people have.
Yes.
Question, when you're rocking your wings to get some more fuel in the wing that's low, if it's full, in those few minutes until you get going, should there be any amount of gas making it through the caps?
No.
Coming out? No?
No. The caps are supposed to be a tight seal, and of course the caps have got two O-rings. So 29513 338 O-ring around the outside. It's a 29513 O-ring around the inside. Everyone changes the outside O-ring, but no one changes the inside one. And there's two, and there's an AD on the gas caps. 600s and 601Ps tells you what the tension should be on the caps, but we do it for all aerostats. So no, there shouldn't be any leakage around the cap. We have found a few of them where the gas cap can be tight in the receptacle, but you can rock it like a dish. So we've swapped the cap with a fuselage cap, and that stopped the rocking, and then it doesn't leak anymore. The only replacement for the gas caps right now is from GM, and they're pretty expensive caps. All right, we're going to change the subject. We're going to go to my favorite, alternators.
Electrical. Of course.
Go ahead. And go. So this has happened so many times. A customer will come in and say, my alternator doesn't work. You know, the light's on. Okay, next picture. So this is the scenario for you. Middle position on the ammeter, 40 amps. I'm giving you the same information that the pilots will give me. Next picture. Ammeter selected to the left. No output. Okay, so now you've got the left alternator light, 40 in the middle, 0 on the left. Next picture. 20 on the right. Now here's my question. Right now, without you thinking about it, what's wrong? What are you going to do? Hands up, who's going to turn off the fouled alternator and recycle it? I don't believe you lot. No one's going to touch it. You're going to turn the left one on and off. Anyone going to turn off the right one and recycle it?
No.
Would they? Someone tell me what's wrong with this? They've given you all the information to know what's wrong with it without you doing anything else.
I mean,
Go
it's just
back
an
to-
indicator.
Go back to
Indicator
the
on the
first
left.
picture.
Okay.
This is how it started. You're night IFR. You're in icing conditions. The light comes on. Okay, next picture again. You go to the ammeter. That's what it's set to. Not a particularly heavy load. Next picture. Next picture. Last picture. I'm giving you the last piece of information. You push the button, now you're reading the voltage. Again, what's wrong with this system?
It's an indication. I mean,
It's drawing everything off the right.
no.
This is what makes this so intriguing. If you've got 40 amps in the middle and 20 amps on one side, and you're not at battery voltage, where's the other 20 coming from?
The left alternator.
So the answer is, there's nothing wrong with this. So we've got a light indication and a bad ammeter. And does it happen? Sure does. Go, can we up the next one? Let's go back. Next one down. Next one.
Second.
Option, yeah. Next one down. Yeah. Okay, another scenario. It's the left one again. Obviously, the left one's the weak one. Next. Again, 40 amps in the middle. Next. Now on the left, we got 20. Next one. On the right, we got 20. Next one.
That's it.
Okay. What's wrong with this one? Nothing's wrong with it.
A little gold box in the back.
The wire that is the alternator fail, or the
Okay,
alternator
on
fail
all
box.
the Aerostars, all of the current Aerostars, there is a wire on the center tap of the alternator windings called the aux terminal. And that picks off half the alternator output for the voltage. So if it senses there's 12 volts there, it turns a little box off, or on some of the others it goes through field switches and through circuits, but effectively it turns the light off. So if you lose that connection, the system, whichever side you've got, says alternator not working. And that is right under this dirty, filthy area of the engine at the front that always gets caked in dirt and oil and grease, and it's a dirty connection. And the light comes on. And so many times people will come in and say, I've lost my left alternator, and I say, how do you know? Well, the light was on. How do you know? I didn't have any output on the left side. How do you know? Are you crazy? So if you see the light, don't do anything but look. Don't turn anything on, don't turn anything off, just look. Now here's an interesting scenario. If you've got national alternators, the good ones, they will give out much higher current at lower RPM. And although they're 70 amp, they're actually 90 amps. And an alternator traditionally will get to a point, because of the internal fields and magnetism, it becomes self-limiting. So you can't get more than a certain amount out of it. With a national alternator, you can get more than that out. So if you're drawing a high load, let's say you've got both alternators on, and you're drawing 40 amps on each side, which is 80 total, and you get the light comes on, and you turn the alternator off to check it, you're going to trick the circuit breaker on the one that is working. Now when you turn it back on, you trick the breaker on the other side. You just lost all your electrics. All because you didn't look to see what was happening. So you've now put yourself in this position. And the object of exercise is just look. Look at what's happening. I see the light on, and I see what the loads are. And if you push the button and you're over battery voltage, so you're at 27 volts, it's got to be coming from the alternators. It can't be from the battery. If it's coming from the battery at this point, you're going to be down at 22 or 23 volts. When the ammeter reads incorrectly, as in 0, 99.9% of the time, it's a broken wire. There are 6 fuses underneath the bottom of the components panel that all face downwards, and all the connections are soldered. And every time the ammeter dies, it's because the soldered connection is broken. Every single time. Joe, can we go back?
So if you turn and it's 40 amps, and then you go to like the right one, and it says 40 amps, now you know that you do have an alternator that's not working.
No. If you've got 40, The ammeter is reading what flows through a copper strip called a shunt.
Right.
So everything that alternator gives out goes through this little copper strip. Across the copper strip, there's a pair of wires that comes up to the ammeter. So 99% of the flow is through the copper strip and 1% is through the meter. So if you've got 40 amps going through that current strip, the ammeter is going to show 40 amps.
Right.
So you can't have 40 amps from a bad alternator.
I'm saying the left one shows failed, it shows 0.
Right?
The way you know it is when you go to the right one, it shows 40 amps.
It will show the same as the middle.
Right.
Yes, so if the middle and the good side are the same, then the other one's not working. Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
That's how you know.
Whoever uses 80 amps total.
Forests,
Was that?
Forest airplane with everything in the airplane turned on last week.
I have
40
trouble,
amps on each alternator.
I have trouble getting 80 amps.
Okay, 40
Around
amps,
electric air.
40 amps on both alternators, 27 volts, and Alan says to Forrest, there's nothing wrong with this. And I walk away from the airplane, he calls me back over, it's not working. And I climb back in the airplane and the 40 amps is now nothing. And it's a national alternator and the terminal inside the alternator is loose and it's arcing inside the alternator. So 1 minute it works and then it doesn't. And when it doesn't work, it's arcing all over the place. And if you ever get a loose alternator wire, you'll hear it crackling in the headset. And crackling in headsets, interesting one. If you come back to idle and you turn the radios off frequency and dial up the squelch, you've got a spark plug lead where the grounding on the outside of the lead is not electrically connected at either end. That EMF, well, it escapes out of the lead and the antennas pick it up and they hear it crackling through the radios. And when you turn the mag off, when you hit the one that's got it, it will go away. And it doesn't mean the lead is bad, it means the shielding on the outside is not connected.
Alan,
Yes.
I've got a good question. I'm converting over to the engine-driven air conditioning system, and I've got new alternating U2A engines. Putting those on because I'm told that the natural air part alternators don't work well and don't work at all really with the engine-driven. Jim Christie has no love for the actual air part alternators. He said, put the press one up. So that's what I've done. So I've got a couple of national ones. What's your opinion on that? He said they put out more amps than the system can
Well,
handle.
and that's exactly what I was just saying. With a national one, it's fine if you're aware that they're over capable. But with air conditioning systems, they're amazing. They're at 900 RPM and they'll carry the whole airplane. The problem is whether you can get it on the engine with the compressor mount. We've been through like 8 different Aerostar compressor mounts to get an arrangement that would fit.
I have the 2 national airports on an engine-driven,
Right.
8 years, no problem.
Right. But they'll carry it, no trouble. Yes.
I have the national on mine. I know Al, and we have a problem. What we found is on the one screw on the national, where we had to take and cut that in half to get it to fit in because it was blocking the mouth. I got it 600. But I've never had a problem with the alternator. But I have had problems. I have the right alternator here to quit. Al came, took it off, ran, and said there's nothing wrong with this alternator. What underneath those fuses, I have no idea how long the fuses have been in there. Took the fuses out, both ends of the fuses I could twist like this. Move fuses in, fix the problem.
And behind the alternator, there's an 80 amp current limiter, which is like a flat copper stripped fuse. And that's also attached to a square box, which is a noise suppressor for the radios to smooth out that voltage that comes out, so that what comes out is fairly smooth. Yes.
I have the electrical air conditioner.
Yes.
If I, even at 900 RPM, if I have the engines going, like when I'm warming up and flip on the AC, I got the 40 amp draw. It's working fine. The question is there a way that I can tell whether I'm drawing down the battery or adding to the battery at that
Push the
RPM?
button.
And
When you
the
push the
voltage
button
will
on the
be
meter, you're reading the system voltage.
right.
24, 28.
Where would it be?
27 volts, you're charging it. Battery voltage, you're probably sitting at 25 volts, and if you're discharging the battery, it'll be like 23 volts.
Oh, so it'd be
And
below
there's
the
a range.
24. What's that?
It's a 24-volt
Right.
battery. The voltage is above 24 volts, you're charging. If
So-
below that, as Alan's saying, you're not charging.
No, but it's usually 28 when the
So
alternator's
it's
on.
not on the battery. It's not on the battery, it's fine. And the other thing is, when you push the button, you know, I see people select the left and push the button, and select the right and push the button, and guess what?
Same thing.
It's the same thing. Reading voltage is voltage, no matter where you're reading it. So no matter what you got selected, what you're reading is the voltage,
So whether you just do the left or right, it's the
Doesn't
same.
make any difference.
So we don't have to switch to the right.
No?
Not for voltage.
All that time wasted.
Okay, can we go back? Back again.
Alan, does anybody have a Aerostar without the alternator tail lights?
I don't have any.
I do.
We've got the really old ones. We've got the standalone ones. We've got the two enunciator ones. We've got the ones wired through the field switches. We've got the ones in a little box on the left. And here's another interesting one while I think about it. A lot of people don't realise that on some of the air conditioning electric systems, when you turn it off, it can trip the alternator. Does anyone have this? There is an anti-spike diode that no one on the planet knows about, and you have to get Aerostar to dig through the wiring to find it, which should be in the back of the cabin, but no one's got it.
Like the Zener diode?
It's a diode, and it's supposed to stop the surge that you get when you flick the AC
It
on.
goes in between the positive and negative on the motor, and then it also goes between the positive and negative.
No, it's not that. This is a big diode on the 176 panel. What you're talking about is the surge when the motor starts, when the relay opens and closes. This is one in the 176 panel. It lives in a box. It's a big thing. It's supposed to stop the surge when you turn the AC off, and you suddenly get that surge that says "Don't stop." That makes an alternator turn off. This is supposed to fix that. Can we go back?
You bet.
Do you know what that diode is called?
I don't. We've put one in 32 years.
Because Aerostar doesn't know what it's called either.
If you speak to John will find it, and I think got the number back at the office. On the electric system, if you turn up a heavy load while you're watching, if you watch the ammeter on one engine, and you turn up a heavy load, and you see the ammeter reading come up and then slowly come back down, the odds are the belt's loose. If you're watching the load on one alternator running only, and you load it up, one engine, you should get 55 to 60 amps. If you load it up, and as you load everything up, it comes up to 40, and whatever you put on it won't do any more than that, you lost a diode in the alternator. If your right engine alternator output drops when you put your engine driven one on, the belt is loose.
The second one, I can't keep up. Okay, what was the second one? First one was about losing, what was in the second one?
If your output, when you lose a diode, you lose
Right.
2/3 the output of an alternator. So the output should be 60. So if you lose 2/3, you lose 40. So you can't get more than 20 amps out of it. Because if one diode gone, it kills one of the three lots of windings. Prop de-ice ammeter. It's a little baby ammeter. That little baby ammeter shows all of the current that goes to the prop. But of course it can't go through that little ammeter. So it also goes through a thing called a shunt, which is on the back of the ammeter. And if the shunt connections are dirty, the ammeter, and more goes through the ammeter reads too high. And if the connections to the ammeter are dirty, less goes through the ammeter. So what you read on the ammeter may not necessarily be true if it's not reading where it would normally read. And it's totally buried behind the panel. Really difficult to get to. Also on the electric system, how many people have pulled the circuit breaker for the aux hydraulic system? funny, no one's ever operated the circuit breaker for the aux hydraulic system.
No. Yeah, the switch.
You're right, it's the switch. If you
Oh, it's
look at
built
the
in.
end of the switch, there's a number on it. 5, that's the rating of that circuit breaker switch. So every time you do it, you're operating the circuit breaker switch.
So if you look up and that thing, it'll flip down.
It'll turn off.
It'll actually, and so if you look over, that circuit breaker's flipping. That's
If
why
it's
it
turned
went
off,
off.
there's a short. That's the circuit breaker
Interesting.
protecting
Okay.
it. How many people have lost the avionics master switch? So you found the buried fuse. There is a 30 amp fuse buried forward of the co-pilot's panel, hard against the right side wall, halfway up the panel, buried on top of a stringer where none of us can find it. It was put there so when people come in and say, "Where is it?" Don and I and Joel will say, "It's up there somewhere." And the fuse blows. Or more often that happens is the fuse doesn't blow, but the fuse holder melts. And now you can't get in there to change it. And your standby, the little red lever that you lift, takes the avionics directly to the bus, so there's no protection. So if you operate that, you're not going through a fuse. It's unfused. Why they put it up behind the panel? I suspect to make sure if it tripped, you went and find out where the short was. I mean, it's always made more sense to put protection right on the panel.
Just aluminum foil.
Joel, can we come down to electrical? Yeah. And again. Let's go to the top. This is some of what you've all got. This is what's in all the aero stuff. It looks disgusting when you separate the wires so you can get things in between the bundles, but this is what you've all got. Next picture. Just a really quick tour. Halfway out on the left side, the little square black boxes are the overvolt relays. Below those are the starter vibrators. Below those with the white wires going to them are the diodes and heat sinks. The Aerostar, they take the main wire that comes out of the alternator. Instead of bringing it straight in the cockpit to the circuit breakers, they bring it through heavy diodes. So the power can't go from the battery back to the engine. It can only come from the engine in the cockpit. Bottom right-hand side, the two square boxes with the coloured terminals, that's the the voltage regulators. Next picture. Next picture. Next picture. That's a close-up of the two diodes, and those diodes get really hot. So somehow you have to dissipate the heat. So they stick them in those two big thin heat sinks to give it more cooling surface area, just so that they don't get red hot and fry themselves. And next picture. There's two little gold sensors on the left. On the later airplanes, that's what turns the light on. If you ever needed to test the alternator lights, you can take that aux wire off the back of the alternator and take a 9-volt battery and just put it right on it and see if the light comes on enough. Next picture. All the push buttons in the pedestal, they're all 320 GE 327 lamps. Same lamps as the gears, same lamps as the glare shields, so you should carry some spare lamps, 327s. Next picture. In the middle, this is the prop de-ice timer here. This is the fuel quantity computer. Anyone have fuel gauges that twitch, jump, dive below zero, read nothing? This plug right there is 70% of the time the problem. It's a Canon plug, quick disconnect. If you take it off and spray it with contact cleaner and put it back on, most of the time that'll fix the problem. And next picture. Prop sync coil. 3 different types of prop sinks. The current one uses a little Hartzell computer, and the prop sync switch says on and off. The older ones, the prop sync said off, on, manual, or off, manual, on. How many people have got which? Two position?
Got it.
3 position?
No, it's a diet.
The one thing that makes this system cute is it's not a synchronizer, it's a synchrophaser. So not only does it match RPMs, it matches blade position passing the fuselage. You don't want blades on both props passing the fuselage together, because it beats the side of the fuselage and it drones and it makes the airplane vibrate. So when it's set up normally, the blades are, and it's set up by us in the shop. We put one engine on top center and set the blade up, set the timing unit up, so when it runs, that's where it should be. You still got the same problem, whichever way your props are turning. If the blades pass the fuselage together, it drones. It's just set up differently with the timing.
If you have the older style, can you replace it with the newer style?
You can, but you've got to change the sensors in the wing and the wiring.
Okay.
And it's not a 5-minute job.
Okay.
Next picture. This was just to remind you, gear lamps, up and down, are all GE 327 volts. You should carry some spare ones. That way you select down, you don't get a gear light, you can change the bulb.
The LEDs, can you use the LEDs on all of those?
Yeah, you can. My last customer who did it fried all his lights.
Would you like to retract what you said?
Yes, they work, but you've got to be careful. Next picture, please. This is the back of the prop de-ice. Go back again. This is the back of the prop de-ice ammeter. This is the prop de-ice wires, and this unit here is the shunt. You can't normally see this because it's totally buried behind the panel. And the little baby wires that you can see from here is the little ones that go through the meter. Next picture. Circuit breaker switch. Next picture. Close up at the end of the switch. 5 amp circuit breaker switch, Walks hydronic. Next. This is 700p. See, this one has got his, go back. It's got the field on the top. See that one? That's different. The 700p has what's called a powered field. So on that aeroplane, if you go to the alternators, to the field terminals with a voltmeter, there's voltage there. On all of the rest of the airplanes, there's no voltage there. So now, you have an alternator that dies out in the middle of wherever, and the mechanic puts on another ALV 8421 alternator and runs the engine and says, it doesn't work. Because the Aerostars need some magnetism left in the alternator to get it going again. So if you change the alternator and it's one that's been laying about, or it's been switched off rapidly, it loses that magnetism, and then you put it on and it doesn't work. On the 700p, doesn't have that problem. He's got a powered field, so you change his alternator and start the engine and it's fixed. There is a kit from Aerostar, which I would hope at this point you've all got, which powers the field when you press the starter button. That field wire is a little fuse with an IN 4005 diode, and the diode frequently dies. And you can't see the number on it. You may want to make a note of that number, because if you've got power going in and nothing coming out, it's an IN 4005. Used to be Radio Shack, but Radio Shack's gone now. Next. Regular Aerostar with the 3 fuses. Next. Regular alternator. If you change alternators and you've got the press to light ones on, the current press to light alternators come with a small pulley. Anyone ever noticed that? This pulley here is about 4.5 inches. The current alternators from press to light come with a small pulley that's 3.5 inches. So you put it on and you can't parallel the alternators because the left one's turning twice as fast as the right one. Next one. This wire down here, buried underneath in all this dirt, is the one to the fuse. Everything that drips off there when the crankshaft seal leaks and the crankcase leaks drips right off that fuse holder. Next one. This is the back side of the alternator where no one can get to except us. Next. That's the underneath of a tray, and on top of the tray is where the 80 amp current limiter lives, and the little noise suppressor. And you can't really see it, it sits on top of the tray. Next one. How do you know if your alternator belt was broken? You don't have to take the cowling off. If you stand in front of the engine, just like I am there, put your hands through the opening and bring your fingertips forward, you can feel the belt, if it's there. So you can feel, and if it's there, you can feel if it's tight. So you don't have to take the cowlings off to find out if you've lost the belt. Next. The voltmeter, again remember, you push the button, that can be in any time, you don't have to have the engine running. You can just push the button when you first climb in to find out what's your battery like. Next picture. This is underneath the co-pilot's panel. These are the ammeter fuses. You would think that the left one is for the left. It's not like that. They are mix and match all over the place. It's like the 1/3 from the right is for the left ammeter. So without the wiring diagram, you'll never work it out because they're illogically wired. Next. Same ones again. Next. This is what it looks like on the back. All these wires are soldered on, and soldered wires hate vibration. So when your ammeter doesn't work on one side, it will be a broken wire, and 90% of the time it's one of these on the sides. Why it's not a back one, I don't know. But the plastic covering holds it in place, so now you don't see it's broken. You have to pull it and then it comes out. And next. Just for the hell of it, this is the position of the switches. The 2 yellows is for one side, the 2 reds is another, and the 2 greens is another. Look at the position of the reds. This is how the fuses are in the airplane. They're not together. Next.
I think that's it.
Okay, back. Let's go down to gear. Okay, would you fly like that?
No.
What does that probably mean?
Broken belt.
Broken belt. Okay, next. Would you fly like that?
When you start, the doors will probably close.
Everyone agree? Okay, all right. That's the doors with no pressure. Next. Would you fly like that? Nose doors.
I did.
Okay, so for everybody else, would you fly like that?
Well, I had a vibration, I felt the engine was coming off, I couldn't figure out what it was, Joel helped me out, there's a little pin between the,
Okay, so the answer is no. Not normally no, but if you're stuck out in the middle of nowhere and you stay below 156 knots, and you push the doors so they stay shut, they'll stay shut. You don't want to fly with them open.
Yeah, I did that.
Okay, that's why it was vibrating. Next. Would you fly like that?
Yes.
Yes.
Why are the doors drooping?
Yeah. It's okay.
No air pressure.
Yeah.
The doors are connected to linkage on a longer rod that goes up to a bell crank with a rod that comes down and attaches to the top front right side of the strut. When the airplane is on the ground, the strut angle is pushing the wheel forwards. When the wheel pushes forwards, any play there lets the wheel move forward more, and when it moves forward more, it pushes the linkage so the doors droop. So what you're seeing there is play in the nose gear. It's not playing the doors, it's playing the nose gear. Next one. See this? On the Weeble nose gears, and you can tell what you've got. Look at this collar around the bottom of the strut. If your collar's got bolts, it's a Weeble gear. If the collar is like carcellated, it's an ozone gear. Weeble gears have got this. So when your doors are hanging open, there's a shear pin that lives right inside there that breaks.
Nobody can see.
And no one knows it's there. It's hidden. Just us guys know it's there. So we keep it as a secret. And next picture. This is a close-up of it. It is right in between those two links, and it is right across there. It's a tiny little thing. Next picture. That's what it looks like. That's a pencil. It's tiny. And those, just can you go back one picture? When it shears, these links either side go up or come down, and they shear the little ears off that pin. That's where it is, and that's what it is. So to fix it, they need to undo the two bolts, push out broken parts and put the new one in, but that's where it lives. And again, no one could ever find it, unless they know the Aerostar. Next picture. Again, against the pencil, it's tiny. On the nose steering. How many people have got a steering system that doesn't work when they land? I don't believe no one. How many people have got a steering system that doesn't work one direction?
Mine doesn't work in the air.
That's a good sign. So you've all got steering systems that just all work perfectly. Okay, when it dies, there's two rocker switches. The top one selects which directional solenoid it's going to power to turn left or right. The bottom one puts an electric ground on whatever you've selected, and puts a ground on a return solenoid. So the solenoid is a T shape. The left or right sides of the T is the direction for fluid coming in, and the solenoid on the bottom is the return for the fluid that has to come back out from the other side of the system. So if you get steering that doesn't work on one side, the first thing to do is look at the hydraulic pressure gauge. If the steering system's working, the gauge will twitch every time you push the button. So if you push the steering button in either direction and the gauge twitches, the odds are the steering collar just needs greasing. If the gauge doesn't twitch, it means electrically there's a problem, or the return solenoid is not opening, and that's the one that's on the bottom, or it's the switch. So let's say it's the switch. If you move the top rocker one way and the bottom rocker the other way, and it fixes the problem, it's the switch. If you move the top rocker one way and the bottom the other, and it's no different, it's the return valve. And the return valve has got a thing inside it like a pencil lead. You remember solenoids?
Yeah.
The pencil lead is in a solenoid and it sticks. So now your steering doesn't work. Most of the time it's after a long cold descent. Next one. This is the solenoid valve in the nose here. Left and right sides, and return on the bottom. And this is the one on the bottom But if that doesn't open, the steering doesn't work in any direction. Next. What's missing from that picture that's really expensive?
Sometimes.
Turn limits.
Turn limits.
You can stick on a strip of masking tape, but if you don't, it can cost you $4,000 because no one knows how far to turn the wheel. So you should put a tow bar on it and push it as far as it goes sideways, and then pull it back like 12 inches, and then lift it up and put a stripe on it that corresponds. Now when they get to your turn limit, they're nowhere near the end of travel. That missing strip can be really expensive. Next one. So, remember the two different colours? One's bolted and one looks like a castle. This is the castle one. So this is an ozone one. This is an ozone collar. And when they don't see the strip and keep going, this is the part they wreck. This tower breaks off the top. It's like $2,500, and you have to reseal the strut to change it. Next picture. This is a Weeble, round collar with the bolts. See this? Can you zoom into that? You see this? That's where it's cracked, it's broken off. What makes this one interesting is you all do a pre-flight. I don't know if you look at the steering collar tower. This is the steering collar tower. If you look at it every pre-flight before you fly, and every time you land, if it's broken when you come back, you know where it happened. So this one aeroplane, we were test flying. We test flew it 6 times, and each time we flew it, I pre-flighted it, and I got it all ready to go. Our 5th flight, I pre-flighted it. We flew around the back. We came back. We parked the airplane. We didn't go near it again for 2 days. When I came back and pre-flighted it before I went, I see this. Now I can go to my landlord and say, hey, you broke his steering collar, and they paid for it. You don't have that luxury if you don't look before you fly and when you land. Because if it's not broken when you land and it's there before you fly, you know where you were when they broke it. It's not a he said, she said. Next one.
Alan,
Yes.
Marsh Brothers were working on an STC for a T-pin removal that allowed you to split those 2 cartridges.
Yeah, and that's probably a good idea. And also both steering collars have different pins in them. The numbers here if you want them, if you end up changing. The squat switch on the nose gear works the gear's safety bar and starts the pressurization, operates the safety valve. Next one. That's what it looks like from the back. Next. Almost every star out there, every Aerostar out there has cracked strut doors. If you don't find cracks in your strut doors, you're probably not doing a pre-flight. They all crack just like this. They crack here, they crack across the bottom. So you need to make sure that you check them for cracks. You don't want to lose the strut door. Next.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, back. Let's go to instrument now. The first one. You've all got an instrument air gauge. How many of the airplanes have got a pressure system and how many have got a vacuum system? Pressure, vacuum, which do you all have? Pressure, any vacuum? Okay, well if you've got the ice boots, you've got vacuum as well. Because it's the vacuum that holds the boots down. But they've all got pressure pumps. The pressure pumps work the system, to work your instruments and the door seals. And if you don't have the electric option on the door seal, they inflate the door seal. And you've also got a little instrument air source gauge that's got a needle and 2 red pips. The 2 red pips come from this manifold in the back of the cabin, and the red pips come from these little tubes each side on the outside. If you start one engine and both pips go out, it means that this little cow's tongue flap of rubber in here hasn't closed, and the air that's coming from this side has gone all the way across to this side and out of this pip line. So this pip line and this pip line takes both the pips out. But you've only got one engine running. If you don't fix it, the dirt that's in that line goes in this side, through there, out that side, and back out of the other pump that's not running yet, and now you can take out your other pump. Next picture. This is the gauge here. Anyone have a problem where when they climb, the instrument air drops? When they descend, it comes back up? Okay, next picture. The 600 and the P models have got different gauges. They look exactly the same from the front, but they're not. The 600s, the 600 gauge has got little vent holes here and here. So it's got cabin air. If you put that one in the P model, cabin air, as you climb, the reading goes down, and everyone says something's wrong with the vacuum system. It's not, it's the wrong gauge. But the guy that put it in probably doesn't realise he's putting the wrong gauge. One is like a 1G4-11, and the other one's like a 1G4-7. They even sound the same, but they're different. Next. This is the regulator in the wing. When you tell the door seal to inflate or the boots to inflate, this regulator that was dumping all of the excess air out through these holes closes, so the pressure in the system builds up. If you don't have the electric door seal option, and the door seal system keeps recycling, every time it cycles, it closes this valve, and the pressure against the pumps keeps backing up. And eventually it takes out your $800 442 vacuum pumps, 441 CC7 pumps. Next picture. This is the de-ice valve. It's hidden behind this little plate. It's in the back of the left gear bay, and it takes the air pressure that's coming out of the pump and puts it out through a little venturi. So either the boots are being inflated or they're being sucked down by the vacuum from the venturi. Next. This is another picture of the unit. This unit right here is the electric door seal option. Does everyone have the electric door seal?
Yep.
If you have a P model, you want the electric door seal option. It's one of the best kits Christie ever came out with. If you get a pinhole in the door seal, this pump will just keep running and keep the door seal inflated all day long. If you don't have this and you get a leak in the door seal, you run the risk of trashing both engine vacuum pumps.
Use them both together?
You end up with a switch that says normal or electric, and you just leave it in the electric position. You never use the other position, just leave it selected to electric. And when you push the button that says door seal inflate, this pump will run and inflate it instead of the engine. It's a very efficient system, and it doesn't care if it runs all day long. And when it inflates the door seal, you get a light that says door seal.
And when would you want to start looking for a leak if you saw that coming on every how often?
A good door seal system will probably recycle when you operate the gear, because there's a differential pressure switch that's in the left gear. So when you operate the gear, the air pressure in the left gear bay changes, and the door seal light will probably come on and go back off. And outside of that, maybe once an hour, a good system. It starts cycling frequently, like every few minutes. You know vacuum pumps are going to go, or you need that electric kit.
So if you get that, so every couple of minutes, you need to go through and find where the leaks are.
You got the leak.
Because that's the other thing is it makes it so much easier to find the leaks.
It's great because you can inflate it.
Really is.
And the other thing is that the Aerostar seal used to be a real heavy black rubber material. Aerostar has stopped doing those now because the company that was making it from got too expensive. So now the only option at all for an inflatable door seal is Bill, Liz or Jody at the flight shop. And it's the third-party STC one, the grey saving Bob Fields, which is not as thick or strong as the Aerostar one. That's the only option. Yeah, it's not good. Next. That's the solenoid. When you inflate the door seal, there's two solenoids on them. There's one on the front that opens to let the pressure in, and there's one on the bottom that opens to let the pressure out, and that's that solenoid. Next question.
That's it.
Menu. How are we doing time-wise?
Right, good, like 15, 20 minutes?
Range extender. I've come up with a way of making it more comfortable in the cockpit for you. Better range. Unfortunately, it's not moving very well. That's right, it's the seat plate. You can't get the distance right. We even found a shoulder harness that would work with it.
I can't believe you did that to my airplane.
But it could have been your aeroplane.
It is my airplane. That's Echo.
Can we go back?
Yeah.
Back again. We go up to mods. Since they came out with a four-bladed prop that could have been reversible, we came out with reversing mirrors. You want to see where you're going when you're reversing. Next.
Did they retract?
Next. We offer a flyaway service. Next. And this is my staff. You know, the glasses and the moustache is a prerequisite. Next. Back. Back. Anyone been through a cracked crankcase? Everyone understand the difference in these cases and why it's really important to know what you've got and what you're getting? Go to cases. Go to the old style.
Yep.
The old style case is cracked because there's sharp corners. This is a classic example. See, there's a sharp square here, and it's the same thing here. It's a square. It's flat on top, square down there, and it's square underneath. It's an old style case. There's a casting number. The casting number down here is going to be an LW13 series. They're a phase 2 case. Phase 1 case, they were the first, quote, heavy-duty cases. The original light-duty cases had cylinder hold-down plates and thin cylinder bases, and I don't think anyone will touch them anymore. The first heavy-duty case, which was this one, that down here there's a casting that says LW13. That's the number it starts with, and these will crack. It's just a question of when, but they will crack. And they crack right across here and up here. Every one of them. Can be 5 hours, can be 50 hours, can be 150 hours, but they'll crack. If you have one of these crack, you don't want to repair it, you don't want this case back, you need to throw it away. So go back, Joel. Go to the new style. See, this is all now all nice and round. You see the difference? These cases are good. I've never had to change one of these cases because it was cracked. I gave in a pair of engines with these cases for overhaul, And they said the cases were cracked on the inside, they changed the cases. And I said, okay, and what they gave me back was the other cases. So I made all these pictures and I sent them to the CEO of Teledyne Continental Motors so that he understood the difference between these cases and why I didn't want them, because they were Mattertuck, who of course is not around anymore. And they ended up changing the engines. So you don't want the square cases. If you get a square case, you want to change it for these, and these started at an LW15 series, all nice round smoke cases. Next. And back. Back. Go to filter method. When your mechanics do your oil and filter change, you need to say to them, did you check it with a magnet? If you don't check it with a magnet, you don't find this. A lot of shops don't use a magnet. Cut, filter, and you don't see if all these ferrous particles are laying in the bottom of the oil, and they may not wash out enough for you to see it. You run a magnet through it, you get a whole bunch of fuzz. This was on an engine that had an oil and filter change 12 hours earlier. This obviously didn't just happen. Next. Next. This was the camshaft from the engine.
Wow.
This is what it should have looked like. This was what it should have looked like. You see, this one's all missing. All the pointer's gone. Next. This is what the magnet finds. Without running the magnet through it, you don't find it. And the shops don't normally do it. You need to say to the mechanic, did you check the filter with a magnet? Otherwise the answer is, yeah, check the filter, it's clean. And you're sitting on this and you don't know anything about it. The engine's not going to self-destruct through this, but what it does is it embeds all this hard material in the side of the piston, it wears out the oil pump and your pressure drops, and all the repairs cost twice as much because this is in the engine.
If that is, will it not be producing as much power?
You won't notice anything.
You won't even
different
notice it?
until it gets to the point someone opens the filter and it's packed.
Okay.
And now because it's packed, you've got to overhaul everything that's on the engine because this stuff is hard. It's from the cam follower and the cam lobes, and this is hardened steel, so everything just goes through it, trashes. Any questions on that? Yes.
You said it had just had an oil change 12 hours ago.
Yes.
What made you decide to check that?
Because the airplane had a gear up landing, and I took the engines out and gave them to a shop for a tear down inspection. They said, come and look at these filters. And oh my God. So this wasn't found because there was a problem. It was found because the engines were torn down. And the pistons have got plugs at either end of them because the piston pin that holds the piston to the con rod sits there floating about. And when it's floating about, you don't want the ends of it to smack into the cylinder walls when it's going up and down a million miles an hour. So they put piston pin plugs in there that are a softer material. The end of these plugs is dome shaped. So normally when they wear, you get a tiny, tiny little polished spot on the end of this dome. When they wear excessively, this dome gets shaved down to match the contour of the cylinder. And this is where it turns into. And this one you can see is stuck and didn't rotate, so it's just worn up and down instead of a little circle. When you pull the oil filter and you get aluminum dust, this is where it's from. The piston pin plugs. This is not going to trash the engine, it's not going to do any harm, it just gets worse and worse and worse. Next. Okay. How about magneto? magneto looks like on the inside. How many people do a mag? Why do you do a mag check?
Check helium.
Okay. Do you care if the mag is hot? What's the concern with the mag being live?
If you turn the prop,
Right, if you turn the prop, it could kick and,
Okay. It used to be, in the olden times, when the aeroplanes had impulse couplings on the mag, that you turn the prop over really, really slow, and a coil on the end of the mag drive stopped, and you turn the prop, and the coil hit a pin or released, and flipped over, and there you got a spark. The Aerostar doesn't have impulse couplings, so you could probably turn that prop all day long, and it's not going to fire, because you've got no spark. But what does happen is, if the live mag is the left one, you're probably not going to start the engine. Why? Because the shower of sparks comes down the left P lead. So if the left mag is live, you turn the mag switches off and the engine keeps running, and you see, and you complain about the switches, you see it's the left mag that's live, the odds are really good that you're not going to be able to start that engine. Because the shower of sparks comes down two wires. It comes down one wire to the retard lead and the other wire to the P lead. And it's looking for a ground. So the magneto fires in a retarded condition. Of course, you don't want the mag to fire early, because the engine will kick back. So you need to delay when it fires so that it's closer to top center, so when it does fire, the prop's going the right way. So we put a retard breaker in there just to delay when this happens. So when the retard breaker opens, now the spark comes down the P lead. But if the P lead's broken, the spark can't come down it. So now the engine doesn't want to start. So now you see this, when you're cranking and cranking and cranking and cranking, it doesn't want to start. You let go and it starts. It starts because the engine's still turning over fast enough, and as you let go of it, the other mag has now come online, which was turned off. Now you've got two mags online with it spinning around. Now it may start. It may also kick back. So if before you shut the engine down, if you do a mag check and you find you've got a live mag, now you can say to myself, do I want to be stuck here when there's a maintenance shop down there? I should taxi down there before I turn off. Once you shut the engine off, you lose that choice. So you should do a mag check before you shut down. And this is what a mag looks like. There's another piece of our masterpiece of hacking the mag up so you can see what's inside it. Next picture. This is the part that spins, this is the coil, and usually the magnetism runs around here, down here, through here, and back up to here. And when this rotates, the north-south poles reverse, and now the magnetic field goes backwards. And that induces voltage in this coil, and that's the coil that sends the spark to the mag. Yes. To keep the magnetic field in the right place, of course, to make it efficient, they don't want the magnetism to leak out. They give it pathways to retain it, and the pathways are these laminations. If you zoom in, Joel, you can just see these are all laminated. Like down here. Zoom back out. Got it? See the laminations? All these laminations here is so the magnetism stays in those sandwiches, so it doesn't leak out. So the magnetism that goes through the coil is stronger than it would be than if you didn't do that. Okay, next. See that stuff? That's what you see, and this is what the engine hears when you press the starter button with your shower spark system when it's working right. It's a continuous, ongoing spark. Should jump 1/4 of an inch, no trouble at all. When the vibrator gets weak, it doesn't want to jump anything like that, and you get to about 1/8 to 3/16, and the spark becomes totally irregular. And you end up with the same problem, the engine doesn't want to start. How do you know? You crank and crank and crank and crank. And when you let go, it starts. Next picture. Okay, go back. Go back to the fuel gauge. And next one. Next one. This is what it looks like inside the wing fuel tank bay. Just for the hell of it, last week I was looking at the Aerostar service manual and I was looking at their troubleshooting guide for the fuel system. And I found this statement, which is hysterical. The defect was left wing fuel tank collapses. And the reason was the vent valve stuck. And the fix for it was change the vent valve. It didn't say anything about change your wing. But that's what it said. Left fuel tank collapses. And I'm thinking, how are you going to do that? I picture the wing gauge. So in the wing tank bay, at the very inboard rib, the other side of it would be the back of the engine area. There is this thing, which is the fuel quantity transducer with a wire and a cannon plug. We found for years if the tank sits empty for any length of time, the rubber that's inside this plug dries out, and now the thing starts conducting. It's a really high level of resistance, but the capacity system for the tank uses really, really low capacitance. And if there's any reading across there at all, the gauge, you put the master on, the gauge goes straight down below zero.
Define any length of time. Not that I would ever.
A week.
Okay.
And if you take the plug off of the computer and you look at the schematic that shows the wires that come through here, you can actually measure it and see it. There's nothing moving inside this. So the only thing that ever goes wrong with this thing is from the fuel sloshing about, the connections inside here. But that's it. So there's nothing really to go wrong with it. It's a really accurate system. You can also see down here, this is the main outlet screen. Do you remember a few years ago there was a bulletin for corrosion in the fuel tank outlet pipe? They're talking about the pipe that's behind all of this, that this is connected into with a safety pin. Next.
Hey, Alan, how much fuel do you need to leave in the tank so the cannon plug will stay moist?
It's about 15 gallons. This is the same area looking forward, so you're behind the spar, looking inboard. And right down here, there's two little holes, and the fuel that's in the front of the wing has got to leak through to the back of the wing. So very often when leaking rivets are fixed, and the underneath of the wing area is resealed, and they go and reseal it on the inside, they seal up those holes. Now you end up with like 2 gallons of fuel in front that can't get through to the back. And this is the screen that's here as well. And this is the vent pipes exiting the tank. You can see the little holes there and there.
Where do you go in to take a look at that?
Well, I'm in a panel, the inboard most panel.
Underneath the wing?
Yes. Yeah, after the span.
Hey, Alan?
Yeah.
While you got that picture up there, fuel transferring from one wing to the other, like we've been chasing around. Jim made a comment to me last week or two ago, and he said when you put that fuel vent system in, the fuel vent system, that they noticed when they cut that vent line and attached it to the underneath side of the top skin, right there forward in the fuel cap, those clamps right there were actually a little bit on the large side, and when they were tightened down, that they might have caused a little bit of a leak. And of course, those clamps being loose would cause fuel to move from one tank to the other, because those vents are all hooked together.
Yeah, they're hooked together in front of the in front of the fuselage
Yeah,
tank.
and so I kind of been thinking about that. That could be a possibility, and that's what he said, if your fuel selector is like we were saying, if cross-feed valves not closing all the way, if two cross-feed valves are not closing all the way, we get fuel moving from one side to the other. That's what I'm pretty sure my problem is on the 79SR that I've got in the shop now. Because both cross-feed valves were actually just blue stained all up. And I could have swore one of them, when I went to cross-feed, it didn't open that time. I kind of went back and forth before it opened. So I'm hoping that that's it, but if not, Jim said make sure you check those hose clamps and put on the smaller hose clamps.
I go for your valves.
Huh?
I go for your
Yeah,
valves.
yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Next. Hello?
We're done.
Sorry guys, we're done. Hope you had a good sleep. And if anyone wants to argue about anything I said, there's a complaints department. It opens at Monday morning 9 AM. And feel free to give them to Ken.
Come to Burdella.